Get ready for hot takes and insight from local industry experts in real estate, business, and lifestyle. He used to play ball with the Padres. He played hockey for the Lobos. Now they're crushing it in the real estate game. Together, they'll showcase the best of the Duke City. This is All About You, ABQ.
That's right, it's all about you, ABQ. Now, the goal of the show is to highlight the best of our city's industry experts in real estate, culture, and finance so that you walk away with some value and feeling inspired. Now, the way we like to do that is to answer the questions you may have or interview the guests that you'd like to see. So we invite you to join the conversation. You can reach out using the hashtag above or join our email list to get some timely tips about our community and real estate market. Hey, I'm Skip Adams, owner of Sold by Skip Real Estate Brokerage here in town.
Grant Harvey, Vision Mortgage Loan Officer.
You probably remember Grant as the head coach of the University of New Mexico men's Lobo hockey team, and now he's absolutely crushing it in the mortgage game.
You've seen Skip Adams on HGTV's House Hunters, and he's part of the top 2% producing real estate agents in the nation.
Oh, what a warm introduction that was. It's completely not scripted and doing great. Yeah. Doing great. So here's why you're going to want to stay tuned. Angela Gutierrez from Corrales is going to be stopping by to talk a little bit about her foundation and kind of what she's working towards her project here locally.
Yeah, so we talk about Albuquerque and we have in parentheses surrounding areas because I consider Corrales Albuquerque. Like that's one of our.
Well, Corrales is a fantastic place. Small little, it's its own little town here in the middle of Albuquerque. Great for horses, hiking by the river, riding bikes, all kinds of things. So we're excited to see what kind of economic development's going on there and what we can expect this year coming
And some
up.
Alpacas.
Alpaca. So here, let's throw it back to the alpaca farm.
I won't ever get over it till I have an alpaca farm, and then everyone will reap the
Here's where it
benefits
stems
through
from.
shirts.
If you've never worn alpaca socks, you should alpaca you some next time you go out of town and keep your feet warm.
Yeah, it feels wonderful. It's like it's like probably the silk of all animal byproducts.
It's the poor man's cashmere.
That's not true.
Here's why you're going to want to stay tuned. Grant's going to jump into the Mortgage Minute. And then in the third segment, I got to just tell you guys to prepare for this week's Skip's Tips.
Yeah, take some heart attack medication or something.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride.
All the facts.
Grant, dude, tell me a little bit. What have you been up to? Dude?
Yesterday I had a big birthday. Went to Topgolf,
21st.
had some great Navajo tacos. Just kidding. If you don't know that Topgolf does not have
Gotcha!
Yeah.
No. So let's talk a little bit about Topgolf, because Topgolf is one of those things that's starting to put Albuquerque on the map, right? When you get these big, massive, here's a picture of us from last night at Topgolf, but outdoor driving range.
Yeah, let's talk about that sign I'm holding up. I later go on to sit on it and get chocolate syrup all over my pants. And then I threw water on the back to just clean myself up, and I'd end up with soggy.
Yeah, look at how happy he is. This is
that was pre-sitting on the...
He literally put the sign down, turned around, and then sat on it.
I didn't go that fast, but it was within 5 minutes. Let's talk about Topgolf was an idea that people said would never work. Like, we'll have this reoccurring thing where people will say it will never work in Albuquerque, and then someone has to have the guts and goes, well, I'm going to try it, and there's some marketing and demographic studies that say it will work, and it has. It's an awesome place.
Well, when you look at larger venues like this, then we had the owners of Revel nightclub and Revel concert venue here.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. It was like, you take a chance and start something big and make a difference in our community, hiring local, and that's something that Topgolf, surprisingly, we had dinner last night there.
Yeah.
And fantastic chicken sandwich. If you know me, I'm a big chicken sandwich guy.
He's got a problem. Speaking of heart attacks.
But Topgolf was the menu is fantastic, and it's not just a place you go. Like, if you typically would have like a birthday party at a driving range, it would be like meat whistles, hot dogs, and Dr. Peppers. But
Actually, those injectable donuts, right, where they have the like raspberry or chocolate, and then you put it in these donut holes. That's wonderful. They have like a lot of great snack food. Probably not good if you're on a diet, or if you love fried chicken.
If you love filling your own cream donuts, it's the best place to go.
Yeah, so that was a good time, an example of economic spreading and having some yes people instead of no people in the city. I like the people that kind of persevered and went for it. So.
Yeah, we support growth in Albuquerque and all things ABQ.
Yeah, and that was a good birthday present. This is another legit birthday present I got. These are ketchup Pringles. and they're wonderful Canadian. And our next guest is partially Canadian.
So
half
there's a
Canadian,
theme
dual
going on
citizen.
here. We don't just randomly bring ketchup Pringles to the set. Grant has Canadian roots.
Yeah.
And if you've never had ketchup Pringles, you're in luck. We've got a
go.
whole stack.
I want a sponsorship by Pringles. They don't sell them in the States. We call it the States.
The States?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple things that make Canadians so weird. Number one, their milk comes in bags.
It doesn't come in bags
It
anymore.
comes in bags.
The guy had seen it one time and he's convinced it's in
Justin
bags.
Trudeau,
Justin Trudeau was born in a milk bag.
he also comes in bags.
Make it
Moving
edited.
forward. All right, so poutine we've covered, but here's why you're going to want to stay
Brian
tuned.
Adams and Shania Twain. Also
And Jim
break out a
Carrey.
make bag.
Jim Carrey, let's
Milk
just start-
bag, this is where you get your talent from. Okay, let's move on before we forget what the heck we're doing. This is all about you, ABQ.
And alpaca socks. A couple things. Obviously, stay tuned to the end of the show for Skip's tips, but Grant and I have been talking a little bit about some financing options, whether you're doing investing here in Albuquerque, a couple of pitfalls, a couple of things that you can look for now that we're in a position where interest rates are a little bit higher. We have to look at some creative financing options.
Yeah.
And one thing that we've started to see circle back here into the market are creative financing options for adjustable rate mortgages, interest-only options, and I think a lot of investors take a run at this. So why don't we transition a little bit here into the Mortgage Minute with Grant Harvey.
Okay, let's get into our mortgage minute. As Skip was conveying earlier, that there are some investor or short-term options for people who didn't like the current interest rates. I would say the number one product would be the interest only. And why people want to opt for the interest only is they're not really worried about reducing the principal. They're going to make most of their money on the sale gap, or the gap between the sales price and what they acquired the property for. So if they're going to be in there for maybe a short term, they're not really looking to pay the principal down. So they wouldn't want to put any more money and increase their cash flow. The other thing is, if you were under the impression or had some intuition that interest rates were going to get lower later on, you would pick an adjustable rate mortgage. That could be a 3, 5, 10, and which the terms can change every 6 months or a year. I don't want to get too far into that, but for investment purposes, you're really worried about how you're going to get in and out of that property with the least amount of money to increase cash flow. Maybe ARMs are your product. So consult a mortgage broker and find out if that's maybe the route to go.
Great Mortgage Minute, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you.
The catch-up minute. Hey, let's catch
Why
up
do
on
you buy
rates.
Pringles?
Yeah, let's catch up on rates with the Pringles man here. Here's where you're going to want to stay tuned to our next segment. Angela Gutierrez is going to be talking about some new projects available or that are coming online in Corrales through Corrales MainStreet?
Corrales MainStreet. Yeah.
Yeah, so fantastic guests coming up in our next segment. And then to the end of the show, we're going to bounce around a little bit, and we're going to be covering Skip's tips.
Not sponsored by Pringles.
Which also is open for sponsors. If anybody wants to sponsor Skip's tips, reach out using the hashtag up here.
Yeah, maybe there's some kind of cricket. Maybe cricket.
Sponsored by Crickets. Stay tuned to the next segment with Angela Gutierrez. Thanks. Welcome back to UABQ. We got a fantastic segment coming up. We're joined by Angela Gutierrez, who's one of our local guests here. Hockey background. Grant, talk a little bit about what we can expect here.
Well, we've got a person. We've got a lady that was born. Well, let's say her upbringing was in Los Alamos, playing outdoor hockey. When it was a soccer player, went off to college, came back in Corrales. Big roots there. Husband's my veterinarian, although can be my veterinarian? Could it be my animal's
You
veterinarian?
do need a veterinarian. Let's welcome Angela Gutierrez to the show.
Thanks
And
for
just
having
like that, you're on the show.
me. It was
That's
easy. Thanks for having me.
Corrales MainStreet. Well, let's back up before we get into Corrales
Yeah.
MainStreet, which is a great organization with a good mission. Talk a little bit about growing up in Los Alamos, New Mexico.
I am a proud topper. I'm a hilltopper. So, obviously we're touching on sports, and that's my background, and that's how we know each other.
Yeah.
But I happen to play ice hockey, and so if you've never gone to Los Alamos, the rink up there is worth checking out and doing some just general skating on. right?
Yeah,
It's
and
amazing.
that arena is carved out of a mountainside. There's pine trees. The snow cascading while you're playing. It's a beautiful thing. It looks like you're playing hockey in a snow globe. So, and I think, what's it, 7,200 feet there?
Yeah, I think the town site 7,200, the ski hill's about 9,000.
Yeah.
That's why we dominate, because we are high elevation.
It's true.
athletes.
She does dominate. She
cardio.
still dominates in hockey.
And I'm saying it, no. But yeah, it sits in the canyon, the ice rink up there, so that's and Los Alamos has a Main Street too, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
it's another
Yeah.
place that has one of these organizations we'll talk about a little bit
Okay,
more.
so she played soccer, got scholarship, headed out to Arkansas. We were talking about earlier, I said, what did you tell people when they had these premonitions or, I guess, folklore about being in New Mexico? What did you obviously defended New Mexico.
Well,
what did you tell them?
Okay, I'll say it's interesting going from Los Alamos, New Mexico to Little Rock, Arkansas, right? This is totally, learning experience for, a New Mexican as well.
Right.
But one of the questions I would get often is it's in the United States, right?
Do
right?
you guys speak English?
Yes, and I've been there. I've gone to Cancun. And you're like, I would just be like, okay.
That's a good one. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah,
I've been there, I've gone to Cancun.
That was typical in the South, and I have a lot of Southern friends, but I think, when you're not from even the Southwest or familiar with it, that would come up a lot. So then obviously would get us thinking like, no, it's awesome there. The mountains, sunny, but you can ski. And so we would go into all the attributes of just, the geographical awesomeness of New Mexico. And I can actually remember coming back, I think it might have been my first time back from school and landing and thinking, oh, it's awesome. You can see so far in these other places that have, more trees and beauty that way. But I really think that it's our landscape. It's our 360. It's the mountains. It's that, topography that's so gorgeous here in the skies.
Well, that's what people really enjoy when they come to visit Albuquerque. Albuquerque is shaped in a V, right? So we have the big Sandia Mountains to the east, and then the volcanoes out on the west. So you can literally see, you're like in a big fishbowl. You can see all the way around. And we typically, the skies are clear every day, so you can see pretty much as far as...
Yeah.
I thought one of the drawbacks, I lived in Kansas City for a year, and I actually, it has some allure to say, oh, you can see the distance, but let's be honest about what happens in town. You go, oh, there's the warehouse, and that's where the sight line ends. Oh, there's a water tower. That's it. You can't really see past you. It's not like you can see through the whole state, so I thought it was a drawback, but yeah, seemingly it seems like a cool attribute. Let's talk about Bill Clinton being your soccer coach. Was it hard to leave that program from being in Little Rock?
So he got reelected the year that my freshman year, and that was it was like just a party in the downtown, right? Close the streets, they bust everybody in. We'd never seen anything like it.
Just punting soccer balls to celebrate. Yeah.
Basically, this is the best place ever,
Yeah.
just because it was a big
What a
big
cool
party.
time to be there, though. Glad to have you back now that he's vacated the office.
Yeah, it
the office.
was the right time to be in Arkansas, that's for sure.
Okay, so you're back, and so let's talk about your roots in Corrales. What is it that you think is the mainstay for Main Street? Like, what is it that if people want to tell me about Corrales, what are your bullet points?
Sure. Well, so it's interesting because I didn't grow up there. I kind of was, viewing it, from the lens of sort of a new person as well. And it has a rural feeling. It is not designated as rural because it's adjacent to Rio Rancho and Albuquerque. That rural designation, I think you can't be within 10 miles of a larger city.
Well, interesting. One other designation that we were talking about is Corrales itself. For those of you who don't know or you're out of state, never been to Corrales, it's its own little village.
Yeah, it's an incorporated
I almost called it a
village.
town, but I think for the population originally when it was formed, didn't have the population to be qualified or quantified as a town, so they
Yeah.
are still the village, incorporated village of Corrales.
Yeah,
And so
it was incorporated in 71, I believe. So prior to that, it was a village kind of not yet, the roots of Corrales, when you read how it was built and what was involved in that, it's really interesting. It's very agriculture.
Well, when we talk about the development of Corrales, and this is, for people like Grant, drives him crazy, but if you look at Corrales on a map and how the city is laid out, and I think this is one of those parts of New Mexico where, the land is passed down generation to generation, and each generation they cut the land in half and pass it down to the kids. That kid cuts it down in half, and so all the land in Corrales are like these little rectangles, like this long, perfect for alpacas. And
They're farming strips in which my alpacas will need to eat. But I wanted to go build, and I was noticing all the land was just long strips where I could either have an airport or grow alfalfa for my alpacas. But we also learned that it's the equestrian capital of New Mexico, and that's good because Skip gets a lot of tickets from APD riding his palominos up and down the street, and you're not allowed to. So this would probably be some relief for him as well.
They're actually hitching posts, right? And like we have a brand new business called the Farm Stand, which is, we have quite a few new businesses in Corrales now, but you can park your horse. You can ride your horse there.
Well, you go to Ex Novo Brewery.
Yes.
And same thing, they have a hitching post, and you'll see people come in out of the woods and all of a sudden hitch up. And then they'll throw down a couple of pints and
a couple tall boys,
put it in auto drive.
You could walk, ride your bike, ride your horse. I
That's
mean, that's
as
the
green
cool
as it
thing
gets.
about it.
Rollerblading.
Nope. There's no paved paths for rollerblading.
No, but it's a green thing, right? And horses.
And alpacas.
And alpacas. You can ride your alpacas. That's frowned upon. They do not support him.
So let's talk a little bit about the Main Street initiative and kind of the difference it's making in Corrales.
Okay, sure. I think the easiest way I try to explain it is Main Street is a national trust that's rooted in historic preservation, which New Mexico obviously has a lot of historic properties, and it's very appropriate throughout the state. So a lot of communities have a Main Street program, and Corrales is one of them. So there's one in Nob Hill, there's one in Corrales that actually, Corrales is working on a big, it's called Great Blocks, where they improve, like it's a couple $1 million initiative, and they're improving.
So where's the Corrales neighborhood designated? Like that's,
I don't want to say it wrong, but do you know where the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? It's that they hosted actually the Great Blocks announcement.
Okay.
So it's and where the Great Blocks is happening, it's in that same area, and I reference that project because it's something that's easy to look up, and it's a tangible example of like what does Main Street do. So there's a need, and it's a community-driven organization
to revitalize that part of town.
Exactly.
So you were talking about a designation that you have would be a national designation.
So it's a state in New Mexico. The way we're structured is Main Street is under the Economic Development Department, and to be an affiliated program, an authorized program, there's an application process, and it's pretty extensive. But once the program is authorized, then all of these possibilities are there. And there's a lot of technical service and specialists through New Mexico Main Street that provide assistance in these smaller or larger projects. So like a good example in some of the statewide programs, it would be like the historic theaters. Okay, so if you have a historic theater, they'll revitalize that theater, which brings people back.
That's great.
Right? Yeah, and I think it's that effort to bring people back to main streets, right? And Corrales doesn't have a main street. We have a kind of meandering corridor with nodes, we like to say, or like hubs of activity. So Ex Novo's one, and then across the street from that, like Hanselman Pottery, Moon and Dove Gallery. We have these like nodes where you go hang out, get something to eat. We have some new restaurants opening. Yeah. There's like a lot of good stuff happening.
So when you say Main Street, it's a term you would use to say like in other places there's a designated Main Street. In lieu of that, Main Street is being our anchors, our strong point.
Yeah, you want to think of it literally and figuratively, right? So literally, it's Main Street. Figuratively, in like Corrales, it's our commercial district.
And it won't be named Main Street.
Yeah, but there are some places where you're like, cool, we're on Main Street. And it's clearly something with history.
It's the street.
That's like now. But I think people of our generation or whatever will come back, and Main Street used to be a thing for our parents. Kind of went away, and now I think it's fun to go to these areas like small Colorado towns. All these places where you're like, oh, that's awesome.
Right.
There's a strategy. It's an effort.
Yeah. We gotta.
So we went to an economic meeting, Grant and I, not too long ago about Albuquerque, and they talked about some of the projects they were people trying to bring business in from out of state. Yeah. And I know your initiative is more to bring people that are local to keep local money here. And kind of explore some of the older historic parts of Corrales. But can you talk about any new projects that are launching or any new revitalization you guys are working on?
Sure. And touch on the last one you did, because that was neat.
And also, do you want ketchup chips?
I love ketchup chips too.
She has Canadian roots, so she can have them.
But I won't take them because I know they're hard to come by.
Thank you. We'll get you to go.
My nephew's obsessed with ketchup chips also.
Yeah, good smart kid.
Well, I think, in Corrales, this is a few years, we do have a new gym that's being built. then that's actually in progress. These projects, a lot of times, they take a long time. But we have the opportunity, and I think, we'll be saying more about it as it becomes, an official thing. But we have property that, there's a task force right now that's going to hopefully develop it, and they're looking at possibly performing arts, like a community education center, and we want it to be a regional, regional service, almost a drop, but, provide that to the residents, and then obviously, bring people in too.
Okay.
So that's an example, and we work with our municipality on most everything, and most main streets do that. And so another one, quickly I should say, is like a value add commissary kitchen, right? So we're very agriculture. And so to have a commissary kitchen where that product can be produced in Corrales locally would be another example. So Main Street would support it in whatever way, grants, process, that
So like
kind
a
of thing.
farm to tables situation.
Yep, and the restaurants are too.
One of the noteworthy things, and I think sometimes if you're immersed in Corrales, they've got orchards, pumpkin patches. Every vegetable out there. The Wagners have an extensive vegetable array that they grow, and you can pick your own chili, pick your own pumpkins. That's a pretty big anchor in
Growers market.
Yeah,
Every Sunday in the warmer season, we have a really elaborate growers market, and that's it's actually its own corporation. They run it. Sometimes it's an effort, but ours is, it's you have to grow whatever you sell, so it's very pure. But there's tons of agriculture there, and then I think like the equestrian stuff. Just there's an Audubon Society. I mean, there's all kinds of like outdoor.
Talk a little bit about Corrales, because I know it's one of these little gems that haven't really been uncovered or exploited by the LA people moving to town. I know
do not release it to them. I haven't got my property yet.
Well, it's funny. It's a fine line. I think with anything, there's this balance of
growth versus keeping it.
Yeah, and we don't because it's lovable. It's like, how do you preserve that feeling? And a lot of what we feel when we're there is it's like that open space. It's very green because it's got the cottonwoods by,
You call it the green belt, right?
The green belt is kind of like, east of Corrales
Along
Road,
the river,
close to the Bosque. And there's actually a very vibrant art community, which is part of we're trying to get an arts and cultural authorization. So when you think about Santa Fe, how that's known as an art capital of the world, Corrales has a lot of similar assets.
I do know it's a challenge for construction, much like Albuquerque. Getting permits pulled or get plans approved.
Yeah.
We're always, Albuquerque's looking at getting, doing away with short-term rentals, or at least putting a cap on short-term rentals.
Sure.
And I know anytime you drive through Corrales, they're like, keep out. We don't want any ADUs. We don't want any vacation rentals.
And that's sort of that preservation, group, which is respectable, right? It's how do we preserve it, but also move along.
But also bring in some money.
You
Totally.
don't want to commercialize something that you were proud of the culture. Therefore, the culture dissipates when you bring in too much. Anything for fiscal reasons, I would say. I would say one of my favorite takeaways from Corrales is the kids that are out. You're used to seeing kids on their phones and staying indoors. I couldn't imagine a better community that's conducive for kids playing and participating. I'm always hearing kids and riding bicycles, and there's just so much engagement amongst the community members there that I can appreciate. And I thought, the newest movement is safer neighborhoods and such. And again, it's like it feels bad to put it all out there and everyone just gravitates in there and takes my future home. But I think I couldn't pick a better city or village to promote those values.
Well, I think the message is that no matter what a person's community is, it's like, don't lose the community aspect of wherever you live. And if it doesn't feel like it exists, that's where these kinds of things, Main Street being one of them, right, is focus on the community. Like, look into your own community, participate. The things that I think people observe in Corrales is there's a lot of involvement, a lot of engagement, and kids are safe and they are able to go to the skate park, ride their bikes on, the Asaki, the ditches, which is classic Corrales.
The pay it forward type of attitude that we see in hockey, right?
Yes.
I benefited a lot. Here's what I can do. Here's how I can be a steward of what I benefit from the community.
Well, and you gave a lot of time, and I think it's because you appreciate the thing, whatever it is. Like, okay, I'm gonna give my time.
Well, and that's kind of what this show is about, is UABQ, and just highlighting community
I love
members and a way to, bring money and awareness to different programs that are building our economy here and creating jobs. And
Well, thank you for having us, because I do feel like it is a greater community, and so us all being connected and people in Corrales knowing what's going on in Albuquerque.
So how can we help, or how can we bring, aside from bringing awareness, do you guys have any projects coming up you need volunteers, or?
We always have events. So if a person would just go to visitcorrales.com, or call, that's our website. The village will direct most people to us if you were to call a municipality. But yes, like we have a garden tour coming up. We have, a fundraiser that we ask for sponsors for, and all this money goes back into that arts and cultural district authorization and that type of thing. Usually it's targeted.
Yeah, so she's she's part of a non-for-profit organization, and these events go right back into the Corrales MainStreet, right?
Yeah. So yes, if anybody needs volunteer hours, we're also happy to facilitate those.
Yeah, so you achieve that through grant writing too, right? You do.
We do, yep. Yeah. We have New Mexico Main Street. It's like that capital outlay process for projects. That's another, kind of example of how that's done. So.
Well, I appreciate your time here. Shout out to her husband, who is a premier vet. Take all my palms there. But those two are, I would say, pillars of their community also. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Fun.
We'll have links to all of your websites, contact information in the description below. So fantastic job so far, but I think this episode is really going to take a turn and just get amped up. Stay tuned for the final segments. We get into Skip's Tips.
Welcome back to UABQ. What a good segment we had with Angela. We're now going to segue into the part that most people lose their minds on. They need to take their heart medication, their adrenaline goes up, they get the shivers. It's time for Skip's Tips.
Oh, who is ready to do some shivering? It's time for Skip's Tips. Skip's Tips are anything that saves us time, makes us more money, or allows us to have more fun, whether that's in real estate or in real life. So living in Albuquerque, we're at a little bit of a higher elevation. We get that direct sunlight. So in this Skip's Tips, we're talking about swimming pools. Now in New Mexico, in Albuquerque specifically, we'll touch 100 degrees during the summertime. And I can tell you, having a swimming pool at your house is one of the most beneficial things to not only your lifestyle, but also to your property value during those summer months. On the other side of the coin, it does get a little chilly here in the winter, which means that swimming pools are going to have much more maintenance that you need to be aware of versus if you're living in a warmer climate like in Scottsdale. So a couple things that people always ask is, should I install a swimming pool? And as you can see, this is let's cut it back to me real quick. So a couple things to be aware of with swimming pools. Should I install a swimming pool? Will it actually bring more value to the property? Yes and no. Installing a swimming pool will actually cut out some of the buyer pool who's not in a position to buy a house with a swimming pool. Maybe they have little kids who can't swim. Could be a safety risk. So there are some pros and cons that go along with having a swimming pool. Typically, CoreLogic reports that installing a swimming pool will add about 7% value to your property when you go to resell it. Did you know, though, swimming pools, it seems like common sense, but did you know that the plaster inside of a swimming pool is meant to be kept wet at all times? Yeah. So if it's the winter time and you decide to drain your pool, it can lead to cracks. For example, look at this picture. This is the picture of a pool that the owner let the water out of the pool and forgot to refill it, and over time, you develop these cracks. Now, good news is the way pools are manufactured, there's about a couple feet, maybe a foot of solid concrete gunite underneath it that's waterproof, and this cracked plaster is really only the veneer that goes over it. But this is, I actually climbed down in the pool, this is what it looked like. So in order to sell this property, come back to me. In order for a property to get financing, you have to take care of a couple things. Number one, that pool has to be filled with either water, which makes the most sense, or that pool has to be filled with sand for safety reasons. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you drain your pool, you're gonna have to refill that pool to save the plaster, but also if you want to resell that property. it won't get financed unless you refill it. So if you like this tip even just a bit, then send it to your friends, because that's Skip's Tips. Skip's Tips is, of course, brought to you by Ketchup Pringles.
Yeah.
Ketchup Pringles are available in most northern American countries, except for the ones that are not Canada.
Yeah, a good intro, outro. That was a good tip on the swimming pools. I've had a couple in my infancy of my mortgage career where they had to fill it up with sand because I guess it was too expensive to repair, or Tony Hawk was going to buy the house and he would do
Tony
skateboard tricks. So that they didn't talk about the Tony Hawk effect about swimming pools, but that may be a Beverly Hills type of thing. But nevertheless, great Skip's Tips, man, mind blown.
Just a great show all together, and
get your hands out of my chips.
We have
You
so
don't
many
even
people
appreciate
calling
them.
in and following us on Twitter that they wanted to see me eat ketchup chips, and I can tell you the aroma as soon as you pop this top is horrific.
We'll close it up and I'll eat it. I don't like ungrateful people. Like and subscribe to the channel, right? We haven't talked about that enough. Like and subscribe, and we'll have the channel link underneath there, right?
If I'm being honest, they taste nothing like ketchup. They smell like it. No, the aftertaste is ketchupy. Now I'm getting there. Now it's catching up.
Okay, you like that? Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Tune in every Wednesday night. Again, follow the show on YouTube, the UABQ podcast. And we look forward to seeing you guys Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings here on Channel 96.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
Because
next show
this
is
all about you, ABQ.